The outcome of the midterm elections was not surprising with the Republicans taking the House. What was, according to you, the main reason for the Democrats' loss?
The American economy is very weak, and this was the biggest issue. The unemployment rate is high at 9.6%, but even more important than that, the majority of people today, I think, feel like they've lost money in recent years, and they're still worried about the future.
So in a sense, what you are saying, this midterm elections were not about ideology, not about left against right, but just about Americans who are sour and pessimistic, and in this way wanted to express their frustration by voting against Obama. But it's not really about ideology.
I wouldn't say that they were voting against Obama as much as I would say they were voting against the people who are in power. And since that was the President Obama as a Democrat and the Democrats controlling the Congress, that's who they voted against. There certainly are candidates who think that the answer to the problems in the United States are to reduce government spending and at least hold taxes down, if not decrease them. But I wouldn't say that that was what people voted for. They would like some kind of action. They're not sure what to improve the economy as soon as possible.
Yes, that was actually my next question. You mentioned during your lecture the word patience quite a number of times. And here in Europe, it's strange for us to see that after 2 years in office for Obama, in which I feel, and in Europe we feel he has realized quite a lot. For instance, the healthcare reform was one of the major issues. It's strange to see that surely Americans must understand that in a short period of 2 years there cannot be a full economic recovery.
I think people do realize that you can't have an economic recovery too quickly, but Americans are in pain, and we are an impatient society. In some ways, that's some of our strengths, or it has been over many years, is that we want action. But right now, it's very hard for people to accept that it'll still take a while. Now, the number of private sector jobs being created is increasing. So you could argue that the economy is improving. It's just improving too slowly for the wishes of most people.
Mm-hmm. During the lecture, there was also mentioned that this economic situation might continue for a while. What did you exactly mean by that?
I think it's going to take several more years before we get back to what we would consider to be full employment. Just because it will take business a while to undertake the investments that are necessary for that. At the present time, investors are saying they're not going to invest more money, for example, in expansion of plants because they don't see the demand for more products. So this will build up slowly. Also, we were on a kind of binge of using credit cards to buy things, and now we're not doing that. We may never go back to quite the same level of consumption, and a lot of American officials also believe that people in other countries have to increase their consumption. Some people believe that Europeans should be buying more consumer goods, but also particularly the Chinese need to be increasing their purchases because they send us so many products. We feel that they should consume more at home.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned there that a lot of American officials feel that other countries should consume more. But did we just not tumble into this economic crisis due to the whole system which was already there, the one of consumption and the one of just lending credit to everyone? So was it not proven that this system no longer can work efficiently?
Well, if you were to go back a few years earlier, I would say that the system did work. There was much more of a balance between consumption, spending, the amount of money that people had. But in the 1990s in particular, people were overspending and taking on more debt than they can absorb, and that's what we can't go to. Also, the economy has been changing over this time. The United States used to make more of its own products and consume them at home, and now a lot of these products are made overseas, particularly in China, and they're exported to the United States. But we need the Chinese to buy our products as well, and also to purchase and consume a lot of their own products, or the system won't work as it's evolving.
Let us go back to the core of our discussion. Was another factor that the Democrats lost, also with the economic situation, was also the factor that the rate of expectation on Obama was simply too high?
Yeah, yes, I think the expectations of President Obama were very high. Some political scientists say that the expectations were so high because he created the conditions under which people just came to expect so much of him. It was the way he talked. Everybody liked him, and because of that, they thought he not only agreed with them, but would do what they wanted. And a president can only do so much in a certain period of time. But I'd say particularly young people who were against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are frustrated that we haven't, we have brought troops home from Iraq, but we haven't brought them home from Afghanistan. And they would like that to happen quickly. Well, it's one thing to say you're going to do these things when you're running for office. It's a lot harder when you actually have the responsibility and you have to deal with changing conditions. So the expectations were very high, and when to get back to this, and the American people are very impatient. So the people who voted for President Obama have not been as satisfied with him as they hoped they would be.
With this victory for the Republicans, do you think that at home in domestic politics, the momentum or the pendulum will have swung towards the Republicans? In 2008, as was mentioned in the lecture, the Republicans were dispirited, disappointed with Bush's policy and disappointed with McCain's campaign. But do you feel there is now a swing of the pendulum?
Well, I don't think it has. It swung to the Republicans, but only to a degree. And in terms of 2012, we're going to have to see how that develops. Right now, I would say that neither party is very popular. Even though people voted for the Republicans, when they talked to the pollsters after the election, they didn't say a lot of positive things about the Republicans. And so it's kind of like, well, we're unhappy, we're giving a protest vote, and we'll see what happens here. In 2 years, who knows how they'll vote. In these times of economic stress, the American people are tending to go from one party to another, hoping that this new politician will solve their problems.
And we haven't talked about the infamous Tea Party. Can you specifically pinpoint what they stand for?
Well, the phrase Tea Party comes from the American colonists' protest against the British taxation on their tea before the American Revolution. But the Tea Party activists today say that the term Tea Party also refers to TEA, taxed enough already. And so they say that they don't want any increase in taxes and they don't want any increase in the deficit. But behind those statements are a lot of political movements that have been swirling around in the country for many, many years.
You mentioned not increasing taxes and so on. Is that implying or saying in another way we stand for limited government?
The Tea Party activists do stand for limited government, but of course there's always a definition of what limited government is. There are people within the Tea Party who would like to get rid of our system of Social Security pensions for the elderly, who would like to get rid of Medicare, which is the health care program for the elderly, but I don't think most of them feel that way. But they do believe in limited government. A lot of them are opposed to the new health care that has passed the Congress, the one that would provide coverage to every American or almost every American. But the idea of being opposed to or favoring limited government is a very broad one, and you talk to one Tea Party activist who wants to cut one part of the government and another who wants to cut another part of it. It's hard to put your finger on.
But what I can take from your explanation is that the idea of limited government is deeply rooted within American society. Could you just explain us why that is? And why, even after all these decades, Americans still want to stick to it?
The idea of limited government goes back to the origins of the English colony in the United States, and also to the creation of the country. The Pilgrims and the Puritans went from England to the United States because they were unhappy with the rules on religion that the government, at that time the king or queen, had imposed, and so a desire for limited government is very deep in the American society, and it is taught to all of us, I would say, as children. But to add to this, I think every immigrant who comes to the United States, and I mean over all these several hundred years, every immigrant comes from a society in which they have been somehow dissatisfied with government. I am of Swedish and Norwegian heritage, and my ancestors came to the United States in the late 19th century and early 20th century because there was an excess of population in Norway and Sweden, and the economy wasn't strong enough, and they came to America to settle the land, and America needed immigrants for that. But they weren't very happy with either the Norwegian or the Swedish government at the time that they came. We have in California today, in Silicon Valley, thousands and thousands of French people who are working there because they say they can make a better living and do what they want to do there better than they could in France, because in France the government controls too much of the economy. So it goes all throughout our history that the people who emigrate to the country, who enrich it, who enliven it, also play into this desire for a limited government.
One more question about the Tea Party, going back to the Tea Party. Do you think a movement like the Tea Party can change American domestic politics fundamentally in the long term?
Every movement in the United States has some impact on our politics. I'm thinking, the civil rights movement, which brought equal rights for people of all races in the United States, and then I would say the movements that brought Ronald Reagan to power in 1980. That was about limited government, and we have. I would say we have a more limited government than we might have been headed toward in the 1970s. So yes, I think the Tea Party the Tea Party can have some impact. The hardest thing, though, about the Tea Party at the present time is that it is a movement. It is not a party, and there aren't enough specifics about what Tea Party activists want to be able to say, yes, this is what they might achieve, or that they won't achieve.
Maybe your last question, because our time will be...
Oh, okay, yes.